Hello everyone, welcome to the class. So we are discussing the subject CFR, Corporate Financial Reporting. In this subject, we have already completed our first chapter. So we have started our second chapter. So in that also we have started the meaning of IFRS. We discussed the features and we also have discussed the advantages. So as IFRS has many benefits of implementing it, like it is a single reporting, it increases the comparability, it access to the global capital market, and it is very beneficial for the investors. So as IFRS has advantages, on the other part it has many disadvantages also. Let's have a look one by one. So the first disadvantage here is the small companies that have no dealings outside the countries have no incentive to adopt IFRS unless mandated. So here these small companies who don't have the international business, they are not exporting, they are not importing any kind of goods, those kinds of companies, they are no need to follow the IFRS standards. Why? Because they are not trading with the other countries. So the main reason of introduction of the IFRS was to bring the uniformity in the financial statements for the purpose of the international trade, to attract the foreign investments. So as a company, if the small company has no dealings outside the country, then there is no need of that company to maintain the IFRS standards unless mandated. If it is not mandated, it is not compulsory to be followed. But if for the small companies also, if the government make it compulsory to follow the IFRS standards, means it will be difficult for the small companies who don't found IFRS to be useful for them. The next disadvantages is it is extremely high price. So as IFRS is a new, IFRS has many advantages and it is being implemented all over the world. It is a uniform rules and regulation. It is high costly also. So here the estimated cost of the approximately the estimated cost for the transition for converting the old standards to IFRS is $32. And for only for filling the form, of the IFRS, it is around 10k. In Indian rupees, it is around 10k only for filling the form of the IFRS. So the total estimated cost will be approximately $110. So here the eligible cost for the early adoption is $3.5. So only the early adoption is costing rupees $3.5, converting is costing about $32, and filling the form is costing about 10k, and total the estimated cost will be $110. So for the early adoption, if you are implementing the IFRS for the very first time, when you are not familiar with the standards, when you are converting your old accounting standards, or you can say the international accounting standards is being converted to the IFRS, this much is the cost. So it has been extremely the higher price for converting the old accounting standards financial statements into the newer version of IFRS. This is also a major disadvantage. The next disadvantage is there will be no incentive for the early adoption. So here, if you are implementing the IFRS for the very first time, there will be no incentive, due to the fact that it could be a waste of time and resources. People found it as a waste of time and resources because the companies have to maintain two sets of records. The companies used to maintain two sets of, because in the year 2011, where the IFRS was came into existence, there was no fixed decision was made. Definite decision were not made until 2011. 2011 In 2011, when the IFRS was came into existence, there was no mandatory for the company to implement the IFRS standards. So here there was a kind of dilemma in the minds of the companies that whether to implement, whether to prepare the financial statements by following the IFRS standards or the old international accounting standards, or any kind of standards like GAAP. So here the companies were used to prepare the financial statements in two sets, one in the GAAP which is their following by the country, another in the IFRS. So here the cost was also increased, and the for early adoption of the IFRS there was no incentive provided by the government. So there is also the waste of time of preparing the both two sets and waste of money also. Next, the financial crisis. As on that time the financial crisis were there, so many of the companies were found it too much difficult to convert the international accounting standard financial statements into the newly adopted IFRS standards, because on that time there was financial crisis, and there was no situation for asking the executives and the management to give extra time to look for the IFRS implementation. This was also a major disadvantage. The next disadvantage and the last disadvantage was a minimum of 2 years financial information prior to conversion would be needed. So here, as I told in the previous point, there was two sets of books of accounts were prepared, one in the GAAP and another in the IFRS. So here, before converting the financial statements into the GAAP, prior 3 years information were needed for converting our financial data. So financial data, if we have 3 years financial data that is done in the GAAP, we must have that 3 years information to convert the GAAP financial statements into the IFRS financial statements. So as one thing has many disadvantages, on the other hand there are disadvantages also. So we have discussed till now, we have discussed the meaning, advantages, disadvantages and the features. Next is the process of setting the IFRS. So IFRS has been implemented in the same way as we discussed in the first chapter, the process of setting the accounting standards and the process of setting the international accounting standards. The same process is being done. I'll just explain it briefly. So the first point is setting the agenda. So here setting the agenda means, first of all we have to identify the problems. So here in the first point, setting the agenda means the identification and review of the issues. So first of all, for solving anything, for bringing the solution, we must know the problem. If we don't know the problem, then how can we solve it, right? So here, first of all, to solve anything, to know the causes, first of all we must know what is the problem, where is the problem arise, what are the issues. So first of all, setting the agenda means we have to identify and review the issues. Next, we have to framework the issues. It means we have to give some solutions to it. So next is studying the national accounting requirements. Here, as the IFRS is being implemented for trading internationally, so national requirement must be taken. So here, any kind of national standard setters who will be available on that time, reviews should be taken from them, and according to them the IFRS should be made suitable to one specific country. This is the setting of the agenda. Next is planning the project. So after we know what is the problem and we have discussed with the national authorities, next is consulting with the Standard Advisory Council. So here SAC SAC means Standard Advisory Council. This is a council which decides the topic of the ASB's agenda. So ASB is the organization, I told you IASB is the organization which is responsible for framing the international accounting standards. So what is this IASB? IASB stands for International Accounting Standard Board. So International Accounting Standard Board with association of Standard Advisory Council consult with the topic of the IFRS. So on which topic standards should be made. Next is formation of working group. So now we know the problem. We know the solutions, what solution should be done. We have discussed, we have consulted with the Standard Advisory Council. Now we are making some working groups to work on that, to frame it properly. So that is planning the project. Next is discussing, developing and publishing the discuss paper. Now the working group has worked on it. Now we need to publish the discussion paper or discussion document for public comments. Now publicly, either in the magazine, either in the news or in the newspaper or through the official notifications, the discussion paper will be released. So public, anyone can who is interested in reading that paper, he can read that, who has a knowledge of IFRS, and if he found any kind of corrections to be made, he can directly comment on it. So here this is the publishing of the discussion paper. Next is exposure draft. So next discussion document will be given. Next is publishing the exposure draft. So here the public can give all the comments. Standard Advisory Council or the International Accounting Standard Board will receive the comments from the public. The public hearing will be done from here. Next is after the standard is issued. So here, after considering all the desirable and holding a public hearing and conducting all the field test and reviewing again from the first step to the last step and approving the standard by at least 9 votes of the IASB. IASB is the standard board setting. So from the members from this organization, at least 9 votes should be done for the approval of a standard. So this is the process of setting the international financial reporting standards. First is setting the agenda, next is planning the project, next is developing and publishing the discussion paper, developing and publishing the exposure draft, developing and publishing the standard, and the standard is being approved and issued. If you have any doubts, you can ask me in the comments below or in the WhatsApp group. And if you found this video helpful, please like and share and subscribe the channel. Thank you.